Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Good evening, everybody out there. Soon we will start playing CoT-based music, which you can play. But just remember, all of it's going to be copywritten at Council of Time. All right? All of it will be. And I'll make sure that there's a page of authorization and instruction you guys can utilize if you want to integrate those songs with some of these talks. I'll let the admins review the songs and let those folks review them, and let some of you review them, and so you guys can pick out the ones that are the best, and we'll play those on CoT. They are in-house instrumentals from some guy that pops out the bushes. But we'll get those out to you guys so you can play those. Also, we're going to do so many things. So many things are going to be different, guys, because I have to include you in what's coming up. I'll explain some of that tonight. We live in a very different world. And last night demonstrated a piece of that. What am I talking about? Something that normally, most people do not. They don't watch it. I went back to listen to early this morning. It was about, I'd say it's about 4 a.m. I listened to the vice president's debate. I often do that, right? Because in a debate, they'll ask questions that come from these survey type individuals that submit these questions that they feel will answer the people. They also try to get each candidate to trip them up in some of the major questions everybody wants to know, because they do it by surveys. I heard something last night that is just a telltale sign of things to come. In fact, last night, or early this morning, the vice president's debate, if anybody were to analyze everything they said and check it against everything that does exist, you'd be shocked. You'd be shocked. I'm going to talk about that when I come back. You'd just be shocked. I have a habit of matching information with the actual facts, not the rumored facts, not just facts that people spit out there, but go back to the actual data. I will pull the actual data to see what's real and what's not, because I understand how these things are so competitive. And as I said yesterday, for the most part, many people, they do the lie thing because they want to win. Everybody wants to win. But I look for the heart of an individual. That's what I look for. I do. I'm not fooled by stories or by sentiment, any of those things, but I'm looking for something totally different, something that will translate out for the people. And what I heard last night was quite interesting. Quite interesting. Anyway, we're going to talk about some of that tonight. The other part of that is based on some geological changes that I hope that you guys get ready for. Really do hope that you guys get ready for. You know what? In fact, in the Bible conveys quite a few things. Now, some of those things are quite fantastic, right? Like the stories like the fallen angels, like David and Goliath, right? Like Jacob's ladder, things of that nature. Sometimes they are in this field of reality that we sometimes have an issue with. Sometimes there's some quite conventional things in there, like the wars of David, God's grace concerning King Solomon and David, humanitarian mistakes, Solomon and Ezekiel, Jeremiah, the common things they did. The Lord's idea concerning humanity and how he is incredibly gracious with all these different aspects of the Word of God, some being conventional, some being fantastic. Oftentimes, we tend to read in one of those perspectives, not really all of them. And then we conclude, right? We kind of conclude things based on the reality we live in. For example, right now there are conventional things happening, and so Revelation is often concluded in a conventional way. In other words, no fantastic things, right? Nobody's talking about Revelation, and nobody really discusses, or they haven't said, some three-eyed monster is going to jump out of the mountains and get people or something like that. Nobody is thinking in those terms until the world is introduced into a new paradigm for them, until conditions alter so much. Nobody has a choice but to begin to look at things differently. It's my hope to prepare people with those little tiny things the Lord has given me, so at least, although they may sound out there at times, people will be prepared. Right? These solar flares that we continue to have, now we're not at the height of what the sun is about to do. We're not. We're simply not there yet. The weather, we're not at the height of what the weather is about to do. Humanity's irritation level, your pain levels, right? We're not at the height of how humanity is going to change. We're not there yet. The children, very seldom do you hear people talking about massive deformities in children. You don't hear that anymore. That's only beginning. We're not at the height. There will be a time when people discard their children very easily too. The stresses will become so high that many will abandon their own children. They'll see the children as a liability only. Can you imagine an environment in which people abandon their children because the children are a liability? How desperate those times will be. There's an opportunity for everybody, and I hope you can hear this one. All those who apply what God is giving them now, there'll be no need for them to go through any of the additional training that will surely come upon those who sidestep what he has them in right now. You hear that? If anybody is sidestepping what the Lord has for them right now, they're going to have to go through it later. All those who are going through it now, and they do so in God's way. There's no need for them to ever go through that again. There's some things I'm going to say tonight with the highest of confidence. I mean the highest of confidence. That may seem strange for me to say, but I have a very high confidence in saying them. And I want you guys to know that so that you can make sure that you're as authentic as possible. I'm not questioning anybody's relationship with the Lord. Nobody has a right to do that. Nobody has a right to question your relationship with the Father. We don't do that here. I'm talking about something very different. Very different. And for all of those who are enduring what the Lord has them in, something I have to tell you. Something to prepare you for, in the hopes that you'll also stay the course. Sometimes people can become so excited they lose their footing. And I mean in a good way exciting. Sometimes blessings can seemingly be so incredible you lose your footing. You can lose your way. That's a warning of a different nature for some of you. Very different nature. And there's something about this dark kingdom I want you guys to be aware of. Something that does not fit with the fears of the common era. Something people will slowly drift into, but they won't be able to escape. Once you're in, you'll never come out. We'll talk about that tonight, right here at the Council of Time. So while everything is settling and more things are popping on here, guys, I'm going to take just a 2-minute break, interval, time of silence. And I'll be right back to begin this conversation. It will be interactive, so I have both chat rooms pulled up. I'm going to add some more this weekend, just for some of you guys have been here for some time. You're very eager as far as works are concerned. And we're entering into a time where there's going to be a lot of work on the ground, a lot of coordinated work on the ground. So as things are introduced, open up for you guys. Some of these things are ongoing, so they've been going. You'll just be included in them. And I'm strange. I vet people differently. I never tell people what I'm about to introduce them to. I just watch them for at least a year. Then after that year, I'll draw a conclusion with lots of prayer. Lots of prayer. So some of you have certainly met the mark and exceeded the mark, which means I can spiritually trust you. That's what it means. It's not about mistakes, not about certain things about your character, and all this is about your spirit. Everybody has to deal with the flesh. I'm highly aware of that. I'm not looking for perfection of flesh, looking for devotion of spirit. That means everything. So, I'll be back. Give me about 2 minutes. I'll be right back with you here at the Council of Time. There we go, Channel 0. You guys are good to go. Everybody should be able to hear me. Should be able to. Well, the Middle East ignites, of course, is just beginning to. You guys keep those folks in the Middle East in your prayers. I'm going to give you guys a perspective of the Middle East. I really do hope it makes sense. Of course, most people are taught about Israel. We read the Bible. We see Israel at the center of a lot of what the Lord has planned, what he did. He did things specifically for the land of Israel, the people he put there was based on a promise and a blessing. We know that exiles came as simply our father and his children, his family. So Israel is quite unique, important at the core of our faith, historically, and it continues to be important. It is the placement where the New Jerusalem will eventually be. The people of Israel are different from the land of Israel. Yeah, I said that. The people of Israel are different from the land of Israel. Because I want you guys to see something. We're not talking about flaws. We're not talking about any of those things regarding human frailties. We're talking about what God has designated that land for. Right? Somebody asked me one time, why is Israel special? I had a very simple answer. Because God said it's special. They said, well, why does he think it's special? My answer was, he created all things for himself. All things are created for himself. He can designate or not, but he made all things for himself. He is the writer of this story, the whole story. Sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we think that the world is operating automatically. No, it isn't. It really isn't. Israel is a designated place. Jerusalem is a designated place. And the land is different from the people. Many people may not know this. So we have to read a part of the Bible to get the exact sentiment of this, so that people can see this difference, or what the Lord has a sentiment towards. Do you guys remember in the book of Joel? There are prophecies in the book of Joel, yes, prophecies. But do you specifically remember what the Lord had said about remembering his land? That he would pity the people. You remember that? He said he would pity the people, is what he said. He would remember his land and pity the people, which is a weird saying. Anybody familiar with that? I'm going to read it to you. If you would, go to Joel chapter 2, so that we can have this in context. Okay? It says this, blow ye the trumpet in Zion, sound an alarm in mine holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand. A day of darkness and gloominess. Now this is a description of the day of the Lord. And he's saying, alert the people, alert them, for the day of the Lord is at hand. Alert the people. Then he describes, he says, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand, : Then he describes it. He will describe what that day of the Lord is. He says, a day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as morning spread upon the mountains. A great people and a strong, there hath not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years and many generations. Now, if you would please, just for the sake of this reading, have no preconceived notions. Have none. It always pays to hear the whole chapter in context so that you can hear. Because every time God gives a prophecy, he names every component of prophecy. He lets you know what each element is. But if you have a preconceived notion, right, you won't hear it. In other words, if you're clinging to what anybody has designated any one component to be, you're going to miss what the Lord is saying. And that would be that would be tragic, because it doesn't help your understanding any. So stay with me. He says, a great people and a strong, there hath not ever been the like, neither shall there be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. And the land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, and nothing shall escape them. Now listen, where are we? Where are we? He says, blow ye the trumpet in Zion. Sound the alarm in my holy mountain. Sound the alarm in my holy mountain. So we're not talking about any other part of the world. He said, let all the inhabitants of the land tremble. What land? Sound the alarm in my holy mountain. He gave us a place to sound the alarm in. This is an alarm, not an invitation. This is an alarm, not a celebration horn. This is an alarm in his holy mountain. He said, let all the inhabitants of the land tremble. If you can, highlight that. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble. Highlight that. And highlight the first part. Blow ye the trumpet in Zion. Highlight that. And highlight holy mountain. Highlight that. Because it's giving you a location. God is quite complete when he gives you prophecy. For the day of the Lord cometh, it is nigh at hand. Now, I'm emphasizing this because in another part of the Bible, it says the day of the Lord is going to happen in Israel. That's what it says. It just states that so clearly, and I never hear that read. Never. So let me continue. It's a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness this morning, spread upon the mountains, a great people and a strong. There hath never been the like, neither shall be any more after that, even to the years of many generations. Do you guys know this matches Daniel chapter 11? Perfectly. Do you know that? Daniel chapter 11. The threat is a people coming upon Israel, an army that no one has ever seen before, an army that will never exist again. It's stated in the Bible 3 times that a great army that will never exist again will come in and take Jerusalem. Let's continue to read. A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. And the land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, nothing shall escape them. And the appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen, so shall they run. I know a lot of people believe this is the saints, but I want you guys to hear the whole thing in context, because your Lord God tells you exactly what this is. The issue is this: there was an idea in the I believe it was 1941. I believe it was 1941. There was an idea, and this idea really blew up in the 1960s. And it was that this is God's people. That idea continued, and it became quite popular, right? Because when it came to this, no one ever wanted anything to happen to Israel. No one did. And because they did not want anything to happen to Israel, in other words, the same person that introduced this idea is the same person that also said he did not believe that Israel was going to be trampled underfoot 42 months. In fact, this guy stated that all the prophecies about Israel being trampled underfoot and that the army of the north overtaking Israel, and that the abomination of desolation and all those things, he believed was simply a warning. It was not a prophecy. And he said it would not happen. That's what he said. The same guy that introduced the idea that these are the saints is that guy. It all came from him. I have a habit of going back to see where these ideas come from, because I like to know where they come from, right? And listen, we're only human beings, that's all. We're just human beings. That's all. We're human beings, and so naturally, when you have a heart towards something, you don't want to see anything happen to it, right? You don't want to see anything happen to it. And those just so happen to be the days before education was widely spread among all people. Everybody could not be educated during that time. They could not. You remember, we had the people that could not go to college. We had a lot of people who could not, the literacy rate was pretty low, right? It was after that time in the 80s when everybody became equally educated. Before that time, people were not equally educated. So keep that in mind. So a lot of ideas popped up and they were popular and they led the charge. The Lord put something in me that cannot trust flesh. I can't even trust my own flesh. So forgive me. I don't mean to offend. I mean that. Because I would just love to agree with that guy. But my spirit does not. Okay, so just keep that in mind. But a fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them. What land? It says the land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. There's that word, desolate. Yea, nothing shall escape them. The same promise that our Father gave the people of Israel during the indignation. Nothing shall escape them. Right? The appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen, so shall they run. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains, shall they leap, like the noise of a flame of fire that devoureth the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array. Before their faces the people shall be much pained. What people? The people in that land, in that area. All faces shall gather blackness. They shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall of men like war. They shall march every one in his own ways. They shall not break their ranks, neither shall one thrust another. They shall walk every one in his path, and when they shall fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. Now this is something. When they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. When they fall upon the sword, do you know a spirit can never fall upon the sword? You know that, right? Any supernatural being who's coming from the heavens cannot fall upon a sword. A sword is something that's tangible for us in this reality. It can't even hurt anything spiritually, right? It can't even touch anything spiritually. So to fall upon the sword means they were indeed paused by the sword. That's what that term in there, fall upon the sword. You can't do that to anybody spiritually. You just can't. When they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. They shall run to and fro in the city. They shall run upon the wall. They shall climb upon the houses. They shall enter into the windows like a thief. The earth shall quake before them. The heavens shall tremble. The sun and the moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. Right? The other guy, highlight this. The earth shall quake before them. The heavens shall tremble. The sun and the moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. Highlight that. That's Joel 2:10. Highlight that. This overlaps. This overlaps something in the Bible, especially in prophecy, because in the going forth of our Father, all the stars wink out. They stop shining, right? When the Lord goes forward, the stars withdraw their shining. Nothing is shining. Nothing is shining. Everything pauses. Everything bows, right? So in the day of the Lord, there's a duality that's happening. Something dual that's often people mesh them as one, but no, they're not. That's why a lot of people sometimes they get confused and they say, well, is the Lord coming back twice? No, he isn't. He's not coming back twice. When he does come back, right? When he does come back, his light, his pureness, his brightness, his holiness will be against everything dark. That's why God cannot directly show himself to us, because he would consume all the darkness in us, and it may not leave any of us left. We have to be shielded because of our own iniquity. For anything to stand before the living God, for humanity, that's why a lot of people are told, right? That's why Jesus said, number one, no man hath seen God at any time. That's why the angel of the Lord warned Moses, you look upon me, you're going to die. Well, why? Because if iniquity is in a person, God's pureness will consume them. Now, there are scriptures that speak about this. His pureness can destroy darkness. And that's something. He can destroy darkness. So when he shows up, all this iniquity and darkness in the earth is going to be checkmate. Wherever he shows up at, or whatever he designates, is going to have a similar effect. It says, the Lord shall utter his voice before his army. And this is what messes people up right here. And the Lord shall utter his voice before his army. Who else did the Lord call his army? The Syrian. The Syrian. Come on now, stay with me. The Assyrian was God's axe. The Assyrian was God's battle tool. God used the Assyrian, the bloodthirsty Assyrian, that nasty, filthy Assyrian. God used the Assyrian to correct his people, did he not? Yes, he did. And then what did he do? He turned around and destroyed the Assyrian. Why? Because the Assyrian said, look what I have done. See, you can't forget that. Sometimes when you're reading scripture, we remember one story and forget about the other. All of it. Truth is truth. So all of it has to be true, right? So, for example, in my case, I don't make pieces fit. All of it has to be true. You can't have one be true and negate the other, or forget about one, just shove that one under the carpet and focus on this. All of it has to be true for all time, or it's not the word of God. God's word doesn't go false for a season and then true again. That doesn't work that way. It must always be true. His principles must always be the same. One of the keys is God is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. So whatever he declared in the beginning exists to this day, which is why we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus of Nazareth. Why? Because death is still a penalty. Eternal death is still a penalty from the beginning. The wages of sin is death, period. So we have to have an advocate, a final sacrifice. See that? Jesus, we can't make it without Christ. We cannot. It's impossible. We can't do it. And so here we have the same usage, right? That was given to the Assyrian, and it's right here. And the Lord shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great, even when he talks about his camp. Same usage of things. For he is strong that executeth his word. For the day of the Lord is great and very terrible. There he goes talking about the day of the Lord. Now, specifically, this is the day of the Lord. He says, the day of the Lord is great and terrible. Who can abide it? Continue to read with me. Therefore also now, saith the Lord, turn ye even to me with all your heart. Who is he talking to? We're still talking about this. He says, therefore also now, saith the Lord, turn ye even to me with all your heart, and with fasting, and with weeping, and with mourning. and rend your heart and not your garments, and turn unto the Lord your God, for he is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, of great kindness, and repenteth him of evil, which means he'll withdraw the evil. Listen, he'll withdraw the evil. Who knoweth if he will return and repent and leave a blessing behind him, even a meat offering and a drink offering unto the Lord your God? Blow the trumpet in Zion. Sanctify a fast. Call the solemn assembly. Why is the solemn assembly in Zion? Why would a fast be called in Zion? Why would the trumpet blast in Zion? When we're just talking about a promise of a people about to come to Zion, God says, blow the trumpet. The trumpet, that trumpet is a warning. And if the trumpet ever blows in Zion, it is the day. Sanctify a fast, he says. You don't sanctify a fast and call a solemn assembly for nothing. No. He says, gather the people, sanctify the congregation. He's talking to human beings on earth. Sanctify the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children. These are not heathens. Gather the children and those that suck the breast. Let the bridegroom go forth of his chamber, Jesus, and the bride out of her closet. Fulfillment is coming during the day of the Lord. Did you see that? I'm not even going to go back to that, because if you missed it, you missed that one. Let the priests, the ministers of the Lord, weep between the porch and the altar. They're on earth. Let them weep. What do you mean, let them weep? Because the declaration, the great edict of the Lord is about to come to pass upon Israel. Remember, Jesus said, when you see the abomination of desolation standing where it ought not, let the reader understand. He said, let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. It's the first time Jesus ever said, run. Jesus did not say, I'll defend you. Jesus did not say, I'll rebuke it. Jesus said, you better run. And who is he talking to? He wasn't talking to the heathen. He said, those in Judea flee into the mountains. Run. Don't go back to take anything out of your houses. Run. What do we have here? Call a solemn assembly, gather the people, sanctify the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children, and those that suck the breast. Why would that be in there? It kind of matches what Jesus said. Woe to those who are with child who give suck in those days. Pray that their flight not be in winter, neither on the Sabbath, right? Let the bridegroom go forth of his chamber, and the bride out of her closet. Let the priests and the ministers of the Lord weep between the porch and the altar, and let them say, spare thy people. There it is. Spare thy people. There it is, O Lord. And give not thine heritage to a reproach. Why? Because, and he says, that the heathen should rule over them. Did you hear that? Spare thy people. It tells you where the trouble is. Spare thy people. And give not thine heritage to a reproach, that the heathen should rule over them. Who's coming? The heathen. The heathen is. That the heathen should rule over them. Wherefore should they say among the people, where is their God? Oh, see, but you don't believe me. Let me keep going. Chapter 3. For behold, in those days, in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, there it is. Judah and Jerusalem, there it is. When I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, there it is. I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. Listen, when this was written, there was no separation between Joel chapter 2 and chapter 3. And did that to organize the book. So let me go back and read it the right way. If you guys don't mind, let me read it the right way. Here it is. You ready? You ready? I'm going to read it the right way. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be delivered, for in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be deliverance, as the Lord has said, in the remnant of whom the Lord shall call. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. See, I just went from chapter 2 to chapter 3. When you do that without a break, you start to hear the whole thing. After he said, call that solemn assembly, gather everybody together. You better make sure you're blowing that trumpet. The heathen is coming. And they were begging the Lord, don't give your heritage to a reproach. Right? To be ruled over by the heathen, right? Right? Isn't that what he said? Let me go back. Chapter 2:18. 2:18. Let me do this in sequence. Hold on. So 2:17, let the priests and the ministers of the Lord weep between the porch and the altar, and let them say, spare thy people, O God, O Lord, and to give thine heritage to a reproach, that the heathen should rule over them. Wherefore they should say among the people, where is their God? Then will the Lord be jealous for his land and pity his people. Stop. Why all of a sudden would the Lord be jealous for his land and pity the people? Why would the Lord be jealous for his land at this moment and pity the people at this moment? You pity the people because a heathen has come upon them. What heathen? The heathen he promised would come upon them from the north. That heathen. The heathen with an army that will never be seen again, and that no one can overpower. Do you hear me? Then will the Lord be jealous for his land and pity the people. You think it would be the opposite way around. You think the Lord will be jealous for his people and pity the land, maybe. Nope. The Lord will be jealous for his land and pity the people. Yea, the Lord will also answer and say unto his people, behold, I will send you corn and wine and oil, and ye shall be satisfied therewith. I will no more make you a reproach among the heathen. When does this take place? After the indignation. Not before, not in the middle. After the indignation. What is Joel chapter 2? The indignation of the Lord. After the indignation of the Lord, after God brings upon them what he promised to bring upon them in the book of Jeremiah, and from that book forward, only then will he be satisfied. God will do this with his great army. Let's continue to read. Yea, the Lord will answer and say unto his people, behold, I will send you corn and wine and oil, and ye shall be satisfied therewith. And I will no more make you a reproach among the heathen. You'll not be an offense. But I will remove far off from you the northern army, and will drive him into the land barren and desolate, with his face towards the east sea, and his hinder part towards the utmost sea. And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things, just like the Assyrian. Highlight Joel 2:20. That is just like the Assyrian. Now God says, I will remove far off from you the northern army. The northern army. Where'd the northern army come from? The north. It came from the north. See that? He didn't say southern army, eastern army. He said northern army, not western army. The northern army. Remember, he said he would bring a great trouble from the north upon them. Remember, it comes from the north. You remember that? He said, now here in Joel 2:20, after the indignation, after the trampling of Jerusalem underfoot, he said what? I will remove far off from you the northern army. I will drive him into a land barren and desolate, with his face towards the sea, and his hinder part towards the uttermost sea. And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things. That is just like the Assyrian. That's exactly what the Assyrian did. Remember, God said, can the axe boast against the one who handles it? Remember he said that about the Assyrian? Remember he said, the Assyrian said, look what I have done, and was lifted up in his own heart. The Assyrian did, after God used the Assyrian to correct his people, because God's people's government was all messed up, and so he used the Assyrian to correct them. Listen, he says this, fear not, O land, be glad and rejoice, for the Lord will do great things. This is after it's been, totally overrun. God runs them off. He says, be not afraid, ye beasts of the field, for the pastures of the wilderness do spring. The tree beareth her fruit, the fig tree and the vine tree do yield their strength. Be glad then, ye children of Zion, rejoice in the Lord your God. For he hath given you the former rain moderately, and he will cause to come down upon you the rain, the former rain, and the latter rain in the first month. And the floors shall be full of wheat, and the fats shall overflow with wine and oil. And I will restore to you the years that the locust hath eaten, the cankerworm, and the caterpillar, and the palmer worm, my great army, which I sent among you. Highlight Joel 2:25. Why? Because the Lord just told us the great army is sent among them. He just told us what it was. Oftentimes I joke about this and say he sent a bug army. But the truth about the cankerworm and the caterpillar and the palmer worm is they eat things down to the root. They devour everything. That's what they do. The cankerworm, the caterpillar, and the palmer worm, and the locust. They eat everything. Where one does not eat the root, the other does. The locust goes to any green thing. That cankerworm is going to start on the roots, the caterpillar, the leaves, and the stalk. The palmer worm, anything left over. You're looking at a bug component that devours everything. And what does God say they are? My great army which I sent among you. God's great army which he sent among them. See, we forget all is God's creation. The bugs, the animals, the human beings are God's creation. He can use anything as he pleases. Sometimes we act like, no, God, you can't use that. And surely that can't be that because God can't do. Don't say what God can't do. Don't say what he can't do. We don't have the intellect. We don't have the comprehension to begin to even say that. We don't. So restore them from what that great army he sent among them destroyed. He said, and ye shall eat plenty and be satisfied, and praise the name of the Lord your God, that had dealt wondrously with you. You see that? Dealt wondrously with you. Now, that's not a good term. That wondrously, that's not a fun term. Whenever that word wondrously or wonder is used, it's mystical. It is both painful and it's correction. When you correct someone back in those days, you deal wondrously with a meaning. Your cruelty, it seems, and what is perceived at the time is actually working something they can never see at the moment. Your trials and tribulations work wondrously in your life. They may seem harsh, but they're working something. Those traumas you went through as a child, they seemed horrific and horrible, scary, nightmarish. But now you're given a language. You can hear those children and see the spirit that pursues them, and nobody else can. Only those who have gone through that stuff can see those type spirits. The same way the Lord said this one only comes out by fasting and prayer, that deaf and dumb spirit only comes out by fasting and prayer. So you've been given the eyes and the ears to hear a specific dangerous spirit that stalks humanity even to this very day. Where everybody in the room wouldn't see it, you can notice it. You can hear it. If a person came and spoke to you, you would hear if that spirit's in them or not. You've heard how it speaks. Come on now, somebody. You've met people in your life that spoke the same way somebody spoke to you when you were young, and you know that spirit resides in them. Nobody else said that phrase except when you were young, and then you end up hearing it again, and sure enough, you've been given some insight that nobody else can have unless they go back and live your horrible experiences. That's the only way you can have what you have. If somebody wants to say, Lord, please give me that, well, too bad. They would have to go back and live your life. They would have to go back and be abused. They would have to go back and endure what you endured. It says, ye shall know that I'm in the midst of Israel, that I'm the Lord your God and none else, and many people shall never be ashamed. Listen, and it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out of my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your old men shall dream dreams. Now, listen to me. We know in Acts chapter 2, when Peter was standing out there, those people came up and they said, what's wrong with those disciples? They drunk. And Peter stood up and said, these men are not drunken as ye suppose, but this is that spoken of by the prophet Joel. And he began to give you this prophecy. But we got a problem. We just read something. Oh, yes, see, I like controversy. It says in Joel 2:28, it specifically says, and it shall come to pass afterward, after all of what we just read happens, then the Lord will pour out of his spirit upon all flesh. Uh-oh. Wait a minute. Well, Peter said he referred to Joel chapter 2 in Acts chapter 2. And he said, this is that spoken of by the prophet Joel. So did this stuff already happen? Huh? Somebody help me. Because somebody, it just sounds like somebody's not telling the truth somewhere. It sounds like that. You know, I don't want to say it's not how people do it. I don't want to really say anything or cause problems, but somebody's not telling the truth. Now, I don't want to get anything started, you know, but something is not matching here. Isn't that how people do it? But you going off angry, but, you know. When I come back from this break, we'll all open our eyes. Because remember, before this conversation, I wanted to show you something from a different perspective. Something not linear. Something I think is necessary. Very necessary. Because our Father is nothing but truth. And a beautiful truth it is. I'll be back in a moment, right here at the Council of Time. Okay, everybody, I'm back again, and let's go. So, back to the problem, right? Back to the problem. Acts chapter 2 tells us something. It does. It tells us something about the last times, about the end days. And it says here, and it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out of my spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Now we know this is in Acts, so let's go look. Let's go find Acts real quick. I'm going to find it for you. Acts chapter 2. You guys ready? But Peter standing up with the 11, this is Acts 2:14. But Peter standing up with the 11, lifted up his voice and said unto them, you men of Judea and all ye that dwell in Jerusalem, be this known unto you and hearken unto my words. For these are not drunken as ye suppose, saying it is but the third hour of the day. But this is that which is spoken by the prophet Joel. And it shall come to pass in the last days, saith God, I will pour out of my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Now we know the rest. But here's my point. What did Peter just say? And it shall come to pass in the last days, saith God. Where did he get that from? That's not what Joel says. Because Joel 2:28 says, and it shall come to pass afterward, we'll see in truth. It did say in the last days. They saw the controversy too, probably. They said, we can't have that saying that. But see, that's the problem. Now, I'm going to show you something that Satan attempts to hide so many times. Not that he had anything to do with this, no. But the Lord always calls us to look deeper at moments in our lives. Not to skip over. Not to assume. But to look deeper. If Peter is saying that this was promised to happen in the last days, and he said that's happening right there, the pouring out of the Holy Spirit. Here's what you cannot do. You can't say this happened back then, that was the last days, it happened back then, and that was it. No, it continues to this very day. You see that? You have to think differently. Because the last days started back then. They continue to this day. Yes, that means you were born in the last days. You were born in the last days. Jesus marked the last days. Now, just so you can really understand this, everybody follow me to the Gospel of John, chapter 12, if you would. Can you do that? The Gospel of John, chapter 12. You guys ready? I'm going to read this to you. John 12:27. Now my soul is troubled. This is Jesus. And what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour. But for this cause I came unto this hour. Father, glorify thy name. Then came there a voice from heaven saying, I have both glorified it and will glorify it again. The people, therefore, that stood by and heard it said that it thundered. Others said, an angel spoke to him. Jesus answered and said, he's talking to the people, the voice came not because of me, but for your sakes. Now is the judgment of this world. Now shall the prince of this world be cast out. And if I be lifted up from earth, will I draw all men unto me? Thank you, Lord. Listen. Now let me point your eyes to John 12:31. What did Jesus just say? He didn't say tomorrow. He's about to go to the cross. So he says what? Now is the judgment of this world. Now shall the prince of this world be cast out. There it is. Highlight, write down, put it on your forehead. John 12:31. Now is the judgment of this world. Now shall the prince of this world be cast out. But who did he call the prince of the world? Not himself. Don't make that mistake. Because he, in another verse, he said, the prince of the world cometh, and he hath nothing in me. Satan is the prince of this world. Lord have mercy. Why is he being cast out? Yet he's still messing with us. What do you mean, Jesus? Now shall the prince of the world be cast out. Let me show you. You got to go to Revelation. Follow me, if you will. You got to go to Revelation. You got to go to Revelation with me. If you want to know, you got to go to Revelation with me. See, this is why preconceived notions are no good. Because God will open up and reveal things. If you have a preconceived notion, you're not open for him to reveal anything. You already have the answer, like the Pharisees. And if that happens, you learn nothing correctly. You're going to be stuck with the old ideas before God revealed anything, which means you're going to be in error. So to not be in error, always wait for God to continue to reveal his truth. We will all have the truth in the end. Remember that. God reveals things. He does. He reveals things. Please remember that. Please remember that. Please remember that. Please remember that. Now, let me read this to you. I'm going to Revelation chapter 12. You ready? Here it is. There appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed in the sun, with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and under her head a crown of 12 stars. She, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And he drew a third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule the nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God, and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. And there was a war in heaven, and Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was there a place found any more in heaven. The great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They loved not their lives unto death. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And when the dragon saw that he was cast out unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child, Israel, which brought forth Christ. Lord, have mercy. And the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for time and times and a half a times from the face of the serpent. We're seeing something here. Satan was cast out at the death of Christ and the resurrection of Christ. You better believe it. Why? Let me explain this. There's no placement in heavens for Satan because of his title. Did you hear what he was called? And the dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, who did what? Which deceiveth the whole world. And he was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. I heard a voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation. Who is that? Christ. Now is come salvation. Who is that? Jesus. Now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God. Who is that? See, the Bible says the kingdom does not come with observation. No one's going to say, lo, here it is or there it is. But the kingdom of God is born within you. Now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down. The what? The accuser of our brethren. And what did he do? Which accused them before our God day and night. See, before Christ, before the sacrifice, before the Lamb, he accused them day and night. Look how they messed up. Look, they messed this up. They messed this up. Now you have to do this, that, and the other. Well, see, when the Lamb, the sacrifice, sat at the right hand of the Father, a sacrifice covers what? What does it cover? Huh? When one repents, the sins are wiped away. Satan has to shut his mouth. He cannot accuse in the presence of a sacrifice, a living sacrifice. He cannot accuse. God will not hear him. So when you go out there and do something, God's not going to hear him. Why? Because of Christ. Because you live in the last days, and Christ has not come back, so it is the era of grace and mercy. That means the sacrifice still stands. So you have time to repent today. Do you hear me? Satan cannot accuse you. Do you know what happens when Satan accuses a person? Go back and read Job. Who did nothing wrong. But it tells you what Satan was after. And it tells you what he did to everybody else. See, when Satan accuses, he'll say, God, this one did this. So now you got to let me do this. Okay. Well, yeah. But when it came to Job, he said, well, I've tried everything. You got a hedge around him. I can't get to him. Why did God have a hedge around Job? Because Job kept interceding for his children. And he did nothing wrong. That was the hedge. My goodness. The word of God was a hedge around Job. It was so strong that Satan could never break through. If Satan cannot accuse you, he cannot touch you. But when Jesus came, all that power was stripped of Satan. Why do you think people can sin and get away with it? It looks like they're getting away with it on earth. It is God's grace and mercy. Do you hear me? Satan has no place in the heavens because he cannot accuse. And what did Satan do in the heavens in the first place? He accused our brethren before God day and night. He cannot do that in the presence of the sacrifice, Jesus Christ. He can't do it. He cannot do it. When Jesus comes back, he will not be the Lamb. You hear me? He will not. Right now, so long as we can be forgiven, Jesus indeed is a living sacrifice. The power of the Lamb, the power of the blood is over all of us. But when Jesus comes back, he'll be King and Lord, Judge. That's why he comes back to get his children and takes his children unto himself when he comes back. Why? Because at that time when when the rest of his children are withdrawn, so is grace and mercy. He's King and Lord of a kingdom. You are the fulfillment of that kingdom. So when he comes back, he's not coming back as the Lamb. When he comes back and he gets his children, the era of grace and mercy is over. And the wrath of the Lamb will fall upon the face of the earth. And there is no protection, save those who are still on earth with the seal of God in their foreheads. That's why they have to be sealed. They have to be sealed because they're going to be left here on this earth. You see what's happening? You were born in the last times. Jesus said again in John 12:31, now is the judgment of this world. Now shall the prince of this world be cast out. Jesus also said in another verse, these are the last times. My Lord. All along you've been living in a time you may not have recognized. Again, something is not coming, but you were born in the middle of it, and it's very difficult to identify. Because any child born into a dark world is not going to call it a dark world. They're going to call it home. They're going to get used to the iniquity and everything else, and they're not going to call it iniquity. They're going to call it entertainment. The darkness of the heart of humanity. They're not going to call it the darkness of the heart of humanity. They're going to call it competition. Come on now. No wonder the Lord said, come out of her, my people. Be not partakers of her sins, that you don't partake of her plagues. You've been in the last times. You were born in the last times. And now the consummation is coming. So can you see this with Acts? That it was said in the last day, that I will pour out of my spirit upon all flesh, because these are the last days. They began back then. What about what we read about Israel? That is the beginning of the indignation of the Lord. You're looking at a duration of time. That's why Jesus, when they were crying for him, he said, don't cry for me, cry for yourselves. You remember that? You remember when Jesus said, don't cry for me, cry for yourselves. Cry for Jerusalem. Don't cry for me, cry for yourselves. You're the ones in trouble. It has begun. And you know, that was 2,000 plus years ago. Why do you think Satan is so busy calling everything normal? Trying to convince he's trying to convince every single Christian out there something is coming when you're right in the middle of it. You got to be ready now. You got to be ready today. That's why when that message comes around, every time it comes around and says, be ready now, there's a part of your flesh that says, don't listen, don't listen, don't listen. Something in you wants to jump out into the world and make the world seem like it's okay. You're trying to find a reason that it's okay in the world, but your spirit is warning you every single day of your life. You're to the point now you can't even rest. You have tried, but there's a stirring in your spirit and the emergency is getting louder. You're waking up every day looking for something you can't identify. You know, the Bible has a prophecy about that. It said, men will look for they know not what. That's what we're doing. That's when your spirit is disturbed. And you wake up and say, is this the day that it happens? What happens? I don't know, but something. Let me go look for it. Let me go listen to everybody, just in case somebody said it. It's in your spirit. While everybody else is running from calculations. Can you now see this is a long durational thing? And calculations are going to mess people up. Time gaps and intervals. I'm not against anybody who would ever do that. But what I'm telling you is this. When the Lord opens up your eyes, act accordingly. When you perceive a message from the Most High, get prepared today. You don't have tomorrow. You know, when the Bible, when it says, pray that you're worthy to escape all these things and to stand before the Son of Man, let me emphasize something. It says, pray that you're worthy to escape all these things. It does not stop. It says, and stand before the Son of Man. Somebody tell me, how can anybody stand before the Son of Man? You can't do that here on earth. To stand before the Son of Man, you're going to have to be in a very specific state of existence. And that is not in the flesh. Do you hear me? To stand before the Son of Man means you have completed everything here. You have to finish your race. You see why it's no good to try and normalize the world saying we have time? Because what you're doing is delaying your own process. You have to finish your race to stand before Jesus. Because you don't want to stand before him and he's saying, depart from me, you worker of iniquity. See, the only other thing he'll say is what? Well done, my good and faithful servant. That's why he said, what does it say in the Bible? He that endures until the end shall be saved. The end of what? The end of that person's life. The end of your race. If you run and faint not. See why it's no good? To sit there and say, I don't want to hear it. I just want to go watch a movie. You're delaying your own process. Yet the same individual will say, I need to escape all what's coming. You're not going to escape anything because you're not willing to go the distance right now today. The call is for today. Your chance is right now. Right now. Do you see it? Do you guys see it? That's why Jesus said, watch. You cannot watch. He didn't say watch tomorrow. He said, watch. To watch means you're prepared today. It means you expect a thief today. That's why I use that example. That means right now, the condition of you is you left nothing undone. Nothing. Don't let Satan ever tell you that's an impossible task. He's a liar. Watch. To watch means you're ready for the thief today. Because those who are watching, Jesus will never come upon them as a thief in the night. That's why it was written. There's no need, brethren. There's no need for me to discuss with you the days or the hours. You know very well that Jesus comes as a thief in the night. You know what that means? No need for me to talk to you who are faithful to Christ. Because to come as a thief means he comes upon people who are not looking for him. Are you looking for him today? The key is to look for him every day of your life. See, if you truly are looking for Christ right now, guess what? You left nothing undone. Who in the world would look for Jesus to come and they left everything undone? That's like having an inspection. Who wants to have an inspection and they say an inspection's coming, but they didn't do anything to clean up their home or their AO? You don't do it. That's not what you do. I was a soldier who had everything squared away. Inspections never scared me. You know why? Because I was inspection ready. At 05:30 every single day. Do you know that? Inspections never frightened me. At 05:30 everything was ready for inspection, even when there was no inspection. It was a daily habit. So when everybody scrambled because of a surprise inspection, not me, I went on through the normal course of how I do things. What is that? If you do that same thing with Christ, well, everybody's trying to rush and to go get oil, which they cannot get. You're going to walk through that door. You see that? You're going to be ready already and walk through that door. When he comes, it'll be no surprise. Jesus comes upon those who are not watching in a time they're not aware of. You're supposed to be aware of him every single day of your life. If we would all live that way, my goodness, death could not touch us ever. Do you know why? Because we'd have nothing undone. Nothing. Do you all see what's happening in the world? Huh? You know how everybody says, oh, this is the big one, this is it. I'm going to shift your eyes to something that you've been seeing. Haven't you been noticing that every interval of war gets greater and greater and greater and greater? That every interval of hurricane season gets greater and greater and greater and greater? That every interval of the solar maximum gets greater and greater and greater and greater? Haven't you seen this? See, while everybody's looking for the one big time, they cannot see it's a building process until it consumes everything. Until it consumes everything. Can you see that? The Lord told us how it works. And isn't it funny? Isn't it funny how iniquitous man can be? But at the same time, how destructive the earth has become. They're fussing and hollering and trying to define global warming. Isn't it funny how iniquity within the heart of mankind goes hand in hand with all the global warming complaints? And they're trying to fix global warming when all they have to do is fix themselves. We read Isaiah 34:2 about the indignation of the Lord, which, by the way, is Joel chapter 2. That'll be our next discussion. Because the indignation of the Lord is expansive, is all-consuming. It's very real. The problem with us is we were born in a jail, and we can't see it as jail. We call it home. Take note that in the Bible, it was written that God will send them a strong delusion that they would believe a lie, that they all might be damned who loved not the truth but had pleasure in unrighteousness. God will send them a strong delusion. If God sends a strong delusion and gives people over to it, they shall never escape, because they didn't love the truth. So then guess what? The only way not to be delusional is to love the truth. And when you love the truth, you're going to find yourself perpetually ready. You know, when the Lord kept saying the inhabitants of the earth are few, it's coming. Things are lining up, and they've been lining up since we were born. Oh, by the way, the real telltale thing, why is it that all of you were born with Revelation as the number one book in your heart's prophecy, as the number one subject in your lives? You were born a weirdo. Compared to while the rest of the world was saying everything's going to get better, your spirit said in you, no, it is not. You probably were not disrespectful, but there was something in you that said, no, it's not going to get better. They just can't see. When you were little, you probably said, they're going to find out. They're not going to like it. It's not going to get better. And certain things stirred you in the wrong direction. Yes, it did, because people were utilizing the promises of God in the wrong season. And you said, this is not the time. Oh, there's something huge happening, and it deserves to be unpacked. But today, a recognition of the times in truth is necessary. Really see what's happening in the Middle East is to know the declaration God has upon Israel and never forget it, because the world does not want anything to happen. Those who really love the Lord, who are of a specific generation, they have a difficult time seeing this. I want you to understand that tonight. Those of a different generation, they have a very difficult time seeing this. They cannot see this like you can see it. Do you hear me? Because it was never meant for them to endure the whole process. Do you not know, if you ever want to know what the future is going to be like, then start understanding the children. That's all you have to do. Or to understand the children. That's all you have to do. Somebody says, is the indignation the same as the wrath of the Lamb? No, it isn't. No, it is not. That's a very good question. My goodness, that's a beautiful question. And no, it isn't. No, it is not. Yes, we're going to go over that too. Those are two separate things. But it's best if we read Scripture in context so you can see how. It's not something you can just go out there and say, oh, yes, those are two different things, because you have to do your homework on that. Right? Now, remember, I want you guys to remember something. I'm going to say it one more time. Those of that generation that were utilized to encourage us, those people of that generation who had strong devotions towards specific scriptures, and they weren't really geared towards prophecy. They cannot see what you can see very well. Please remember that. You have elders out there that cannot see what you see very well. You were made to see it because you're living as it begins to go to its height. They can't see it because they lived in a different era where something else was key. It was necessary for them to be exactly as they were. It's necessary for us to be exactly as we are. Always remember that. Each generation is born with insights for their generation. We were born with insights for our generation. And who sows that in us? Our Father does. One day, all people will see. It's a type of mystery of spirits, like the spirit of Moses, the spirit of Elijah, the spirit of John, the spirit of Peter, the spirit of Paul. There's a mystery to those spirits. Are they repetitious? Do they come back from time to time? We know that the spirit is not the individual themselves. It's just the nature, the spiritual nature of an individual. We learned that through John the Baptist, right? That John the Baptist had the spiritual nature of Elijah. Thus, Jesus said Elijah came back and you chopped his head off. What was he referring to? The spiritual nature. Because they asked John, are you Elijah? John said, no, I'm not. I'm just a voice crying out in the wilderness. John had an urge. John had a way that he couldn't explain. He didn't even desire to explain it. He just did things. The nature in which he did things was, in fact, the nature of Elijah that was given to him spiritually. So he housed the spiritual nature of Elijah. John is said to come back. So people are going to house the spiritual nature of John, who's doing his job beautifully. Remember that, though. Now back to the Middle East and of the world, because it's almost time to go. I told you guys that I was going to review the vice presidential debate. The reason I do that, the Lord has always, throughout my life, he never had me look away from anything. But he always had me listen to all things. I mean, all things. You could say it's part of my seeing things. People tell you everything you want to know. All you have to do is listen to them. You can listen to them by seeing how they respond to things. Small subtleties and movements of the faces and motions and everything else. You can even know a person by the questions they ask and how they answer them, how they deflect them, what they like to talk about, what they don't like to talk about. Last night I saw something. There's an indicator in the flesh of men and a struggle that's very deep. Last night, I saw two gentlemen who were nervous, first of all, in a debate, but were very passionate about very specific things. Both were very polite to one another. They didn't attack each other so much. They did talk about the records of their bosses. And to be honest, they seem more presidential than the presidential candidates. They honestly did. I found their conversation much more tolerant than any other conversation. I mean, it was like two adults. Both of them are teachable. Both of them are. They're very teachable. They're very plain, too, which gave me insight into both a hope and a horror at the same time. These two men have a type of character and a loyalty. You hear me? It's not about having the biggest brain. It's a loyalty involved. They are loyal to the people they serve, and they have ambitions, yes. But they also have very deep passions. And because they're positioned, or going for the position they're going for, I know there are more of them, because there's never a time when any individual character of a vice president is alone. Did you know that? If you go back historically and start looking, you're going to find that there are a lot of people that will always share the mentality and the sentiment of a vice president. You'll always see that. It just happens that way. These guys are very passionate about certain subjects, but they're quite loyal to a fault, right? When they were engaging, they had their important points and they had their rehearsed points and they had their, little facts that they would throw out there, but both of them had conviction, which is odd. You guys know that's odd. They had conviction. Both had conviction. They had conviction. Now, I know the record of both. I look deeply into both of them. I know the records personally. I mean, a deep dive into their records. They have passions for this country that are quite real. And it shows me something. See, the people that you're not seeing are going to rule this world soon. They're going to rule it. In fact, the people that are going to be put in power, right, will be usurped into a very dark kingdom and will serve the needs of a very dark kingdom. I'll be honest with you. If I honestly liked someone, I really probably would not want them in a leadership role at this time. I wouldn't, because I know what's coming. I know what's going to happen. And it tends, see, when you will see it with your eyes, it'll change a person from being genuine because they may not have a covering like you. If Christ is not watching over you, you're done for. Do you hear me? If you don't have the blood of the Lamb, you can never overpower Satan. Satan is the prince of this world. To govern in this world is to govern in his kingdom. Last night, the VPs, I can only see them as the leaders, which means a moment is coming. Those vice presidents, those men who want to be vice presidents, were so sincere they were somewhat goofy. It was a goofy controlled response to a great many things, but their passions. It's an unequivocal truth that these guys have great passions for this country. They're not willing to compromise in specific views, and they both have convictions concerning life. I found that quite odd. Very odd. Do you know what J.D. Vance said? That was so genuine. I mean, I found it very genuine. Both of them said the exact same thing, which was just totally amazing. I don't know if anybody caught it, but both of them essentially said that they made wrong calls at certain times, and they called out things wrongly. Both of them said they had changes of heart and of mind. Like Trump, they asked J.D. Vance, they said, why did you say that Trump was this, that, and the other? You'd never follow his plans. This stuff's never going to work. He's a moron, this, that, and the other, right? J.D. Vance said, because that's what I thought until I looked at things myself. That was an answer of honesty. I thought that was beautiful. Likewise, the other guy did too. Waltz did too. They asked him about the controversy in China. He kind of fumbled a little bit. But essentially, he said, I misspoke. I blurted out something, and I'm a knucklehead sometimes. He was essentially saying, when people are not frightened to tell you they messed up, that's a leader. Do you hear me? It is not a leader when they won't admit mistakes. That's not a leader. Those are scary people. When somebody says, I messed up, That's a leader. And they're willing to tell you they messed up. That's a leader. That's a leader. When a person says, I had a change of heart for the people, because they asked J.D. Vance, they said, you took this stance against Trump a long time ago, right? And they said, well, so what's, what about that? What about, he said, that's what I thought until I saw what Trump was doing for the people and how the people responded and for the people's sake, so basically he changed for the people. That's a leader. See, a leader does not serve him or herself. A leader serves the people. And whatever adaptations or changes that need to be made, they will make for the sake of the people because they have the people at heart. Do you hear me? See, people forget those things. They start hearing the bluster of a conversation. But when a person can bend because they will change to adapt the needs of the people, that's a leader. Because a leader is a master servant of the people. That's what a pastor is. A servant of the people, not a servant of self, a servant of the people. That's exactly what our Lord and Savior was, a servant of the people. That's why he said the greatest will be the least and the least the greatest. Pastor is a master servant, right? That's what a shepherd is. A shepherd does what? Provides, facilitates the needs of the sheep. He does not rule over the sheep. He takes care of the sheep. That's totally different. We can never forget that. These traits are rare in these times. And it lets me know that these guys are rare. And it also lets me know there's a change behind the curtain that's soon to come. I've been looking for someone with heart like that to come forward, because I know when they do come forward, it's time. I've been looking for them for a long time, just that character. And because they have that character, there's a brutal part. There's a correcting part. Then there's a time when things bounce back. See, because, listen, during a specific time on earth, nations of this world will delegate trips to Zion. Do you know that? That's not make-believe. It's not make-believe. That means there's special people that come forward only during times where calamity is about to come. Historically, it has never altered. There are certain types of people that come at certain times in history of this world. Those who will bend themselves for the sake of the people only come during times of massive calamities. Do you hear me? Because they're needed. The people need people just like that, or there would be no people at all. There'd be none. Now, don't get me wrong. Listen to me. I am who I am. And although I discount flesh, right? If a person is not washed by the blood of the Lamb, I know for a fact that Satan can use them. But I also know when God's hand is upon a person for the sake of those who believe in that nation. So I'll say this. For your sakes, God has put people in place based on you. It's based on you. It's based on you. These people being put in position means we're being weighed in the scales right now. Being weighed in the scales. Based on you. The calamity is coming anyway, but based on you. There could be an easier route, a protective route. Based on you. There are people in place that could go right into power. Many could fall. They're going right into power based on you. Or everybody could go through correction. All of it's going to be based on you. With the prayers of the people and the devotion of believers, God has put people in place. I keep seeing them. They're popping up all over the place. People with a heart and a compassion, with true love inside them for their fellow man. You know how rare that is? They only come right before a massive calamity. They only come because they're the ones who come out front after the other ones fall. They're the ones to pick up the pieces and inspire the people to go in a direction of light. Now, we all know, reading the Bible, that a calamitous time will come upon the earth. But we also know 1,000-year reign is coming, of peace. And we also know that nations will come and learn the Feast of Tabernacles, which means all nations will begin to revive themselves. We all know this. Things are lining up like that. They're starting to line up. What I was specifically looking for, I want to share with you what I was looking for, was the hope, the recovery part, the part that comes after. The men and women who have great compassion for their fellow man. See, evil people could care less about their fellow man. They serve their own needs. They always think they're right. But when you have people of great compassion that come forward, that will take a step back for the sake of somebody else, those people are designated only for the recovery of places. They always come before a great calamity hits, and these people are appointed leaders for the recovery. It's almost like you see the personnel that were appointed for the recovery starting to pop up all over the place. Although the people of the world are they're going to look at this debate and think about the presidential election and start denoting qualities. Because I saw something else. This tells me the calamity is coming. When they evaluated these two speakers, I heard nothing but hatred. Listen to me. CNN, and I think that J.D. Vance did a good job. I think that Tim Walz stumbled a couple times, but he did a pretty good job. When CNN got a hold, when they were doing some of the after talks, the female anchors said, well, why didn't he just, shove January 6th in his face? They wanted carnage and violence. I could see murder in their faces. They do not want to mend anything. They want their competition murdered. I saw a hatred and a disgust that those people could barely contain. In fact, the after talks of this VP debate are incredibly revealing. Now, likewise, after I was flipping through these news channels, trying to see the after talks, I went to Fox, and I saw hatred. Hatred. In those VP people, I saw no hatred. Their gears were going with strategy. I mean, they had a call within them to go forward for the people. These news media organizations want to murder each other. Fox actually said something about J.D. Vance, how he should have pummeled Walz on some. I said, well, are you kidding? They want violence. What does that tell me? People watch the news. You can tell who likes to watch the news if you follow the ratings of the news, the actual ratings, not just talking. Listen to me carefully. People watch those things that feed what's in them. If a person watches Fox, then Fox is feeding something within the person watching it. If someone watches ABC, NBC, all these different things, they're feeding something within the person. Based on the ratings, people desire murder. There's a remnant. A remnant. They desire to go forward. They have their mind on this country first, and they have great compassion for the people. They share that sentiment. You know what that tells me? These murderous folks will now start to ride. They're coming forward, and they're going to have their kingdom. See, Satan will never bring that dark kingdom forward when the people are against darkness. Satan only brings that dark kingdom forward when the people are thirsty and hungry for carnage and murder and violence and everything else, which wakes up every demonic entity on the earth. Violence of humanity calls demons forward. They inhabit, just like God inhabits the praises of his people, so do demons inhabit the darkness of individuals. The calamity is coming. Oh, it's coming. But already God is setting up those who will come forward for repair. Take note of that VP debate very well. Take note of it. Take note of it. Remember it well. You will see it again. You will revisit that again. You will. And everything else is going to be wiped out. But you will revisit that again, and everything else is going to be gone. It will be gone. You live in very revealing days. What obscures the vision of most are emotions. Personal emotions. Any emotions of wrath and all those things will blind you. They will. Instead of wrath, try to see things soberly. Soberly means you're not, giddy about something. You're not that way. You're just seeing the truth of it. See the truth of it. The truth of anything you see is going to show you who's behind it. When somebody sees the truth of a situation, they know where Satan is. They will always know where he is. That's how you know when somebody sees the truth. They stop blaming people, and they'll call out Satan every single time. They'll also see the struggle of a person. You can see the weaknesses. God has given you his spirit. The only thing that can get in the way of the spirit poured out on you is the wrath you adopt from the world. Please remember that. The world feeds your wrath. Your Father does not. Your Father feeds sobriety. The world feeds all the rest. Your Father feeds holiness. Remember that. So then the next time you get disturbed, you're emotionally compromised in something, remember what your Father feeds you versus what the world is feeding you. And stop feeding from the stuff that causes you a great blindness so that you too can see. That's all you have to do, and you'll see it too. But most importantly, you'll see the urgency of the hour you live in right now. That's what you'll see. Folks, listen. Now, there's some things I'm itching to share with you guys, but that'll be a midnight hour thing, okay? Somebody says, with the Bank of America thing happening, account showing zero balances, is this changing the new financial structure being? No, it's the new financial structure has been here for about 2 years, right? Here's how should I, Lord? I have a big mouth sometimes, guys. I got to be careful, but hear me out on this. The architecture for the new kingdoms, it's already set up. It's set up right now, right? As I said many years ago, the new kingdom, the new system is being set up, and once it's complete, they'll tear the old one down. The new system has been in place. It can be recognized because they feed ideas to the populace. See, sometimes you have agents that will feed ideas into the populace. They already know what you're prone to believe. They already know that. And so sometimes they feed you things that are so believable, you can't leave them alone. That's why a lot of things end up being nothing. Have you guys noticed that? You'll have something that looks like it's absolutely 1,000% dead on, like it's going to happen, right? And then nothing comes of it. You should have seen a lot of that over the last, 20 years, right? All the facts, mathematics, evidence, everything lines up, and then nothing happens. Nothing happens. Why? Because they already know what they did. They set up a new system first. They dedicate that new system. Then they have you tear down the old system. How do they do that? They make you not trust it. They cause you to fight against it. Do you guys remember the 2015 conversation I had? The way they tear down this system is to have their steps that they utilize. One step is to have you believe it's deeply flawed. They accomplish that. Do you guys remember the conversation I had? Because I told you that people are going to begin to look at the government and say, well, it's fundamentally flawed. It cannot be repaired. And what are people running around right now with the ideology of it? The same steps we went over in 2015 is what's happening right now. So it's opening up right now. It's happening right now. Right? They have to make you turn your back on it, not trust it, so you'll completely turn against it. So they can turn the governmental personnel who believe in the government against the civilians. So you guys can strangle each other out, leaving the malleable behind, right? Because warriors will always fight. They already know this, so they feed you warrior stories. You end up fighting each other, and you kill off each other is what you do. Now, we're not talking about mortal death, but we are talking about lifestyles. You can kill the lifestyle of somebody else. You can murder the lifestyle of this person, that person, which eventually causes everybody a hardship. This strike that's happening right now, you ought to look into it and see what started this strike in the first place. Not the facts that they're throwing at you right now saying they want a raise of a certain percentage. Start reading the backstory, and you'll see the same steps. You have agents of change out there working continuously, feeding ideologies and theories and everything else, feeding these ideas. Social media had to come out. Do you guys remember? I think it was 2010. We weren't even recording anything, but we had some conversations via the chat. And I was telling everybody that we live in a new world without borders, and how social media is going to cause a country to begin to envy another country. And the people of that country are going to rebel against their governments because they see everybody else living better in this other land. To the point where they would go and try and destroy their own governments. And this would begin in the Middle East. And of course, that's when, the Egyptian stuff broke out. You guys remember that? Some of you older, dusty, crusty folks who've been with us for a long time, you remember that, right? That's when and the guy set himself on fire, right? That always happens as part of a dedication ceremony that they use with the warlocks and all this stuff. They always set somebody on fire. Always. Somebody has to be set on fire. They set themselves on fire. And what does that do? It's the last piece of a ceremony that releases hundreds of thousands of demons. That's the purpose of it, to release demons in the earth. And the last dedication of that is for somebody to set themselves on fire. Well, when these demons are released, they latch on to people. They become the mindset of the people. Is what they do. So anytime you see somebody setting themselves on fire, you'll always see a breakout of something. You remember the last person that set themselves on fire, and you guys were asking me, is this what you were talking about, Mike? The person who set themselves on fire. Well, in that area, did you do your homework and see what happened? That's when everything began that we're living through right now. It always happens that way. They have their dark ceremonies. Of course, Satan's going to tell them how to do incantations, rituals, and rites to raise up demonic entities, those who are faithful to them. You live in a time now where he will cause craft to prosper in his hand. Right? Darkness is rising. Don't get scared or frightened. This dark kingdom that's rising is like a big Hoover vacuum cleaner. Right? It only sucks up evil people. Because only evil people are going to run to a dark kingdom, not you. So the kingdom of the beast is a big vacuum, like the old rainbow vacuums. You remember that? Right? You get that vacuum and everything will be clean for real. That's what they said. Anyway, it's like a good vacuum. But it only sucks up certain particulates. In this case, the beast kingdom will only suck up those who have dedicated themselves to darkness. So don't be frightened of the dark kingdom. It's designed to do that. That's your Father gathering all the tares together under one kingdom called the beast kingdom. How about that? Maybe that's why he said that everyone written in the book of life will not take the mark of the beast, will not worship the dragon, will not worship the beast. They won't be a part of that system. This kingdom of darkness is only attractive to those who are of the darkness. Don't be afraid of it. You are the balance of that kingdom in the earth. As it grows, see, God made you a promise. Let me remind you of this before I go. God made you a promise. Didn't he say he'd never leave you nor forsake you? Didn't he say that? Yes, he did. If darkness ever rose to the point where it could convince you that darkness was good, then darkness would be stronger than Christ's power to stay with you, right? Because Christ does not inhabit vessels of darkness. He only inhabits vessels who step into him. Which means the resolve and the power of your Father must increase in you as darkness increases in the world. As the kingdoms of this earth become supernatural, so will you. There's always going to be a balance. There is no power in the heavens nor in the earth that will ever be able to place anything upon you beyond that which you can handle. No matter how strong it gets, no matter how militant it gets, God will feel you. He will feel. Listen, I know this for a fact. I told you when I first went to combat, I was so scared firing in M2, I couldn't even pull the trigger. But when the time came, the Lord zapped the fear out of me. I didn't do it. I was scared to death. The Lord took it away. I did some pretty miraculous things in my time. What people don't understand, that wasn't me. That was the Father in me. That was him in me. And it wasn't some murderous thing like Rambo. I didn't go out there shooting everybody up, that cowboy stuff. I wasn't doing that. No. But I did stand in the line of fire. Can you not get hit doing that? I didn't, but that wasn't me. I did sit and pray right on the top of a bunker in the middle of another firefight. Who does that? I was called to pray, and I did. I remember 2 hours after I prayed, a ceasefire was called. I remember that. I remember some pretty wild things, but it wasn't me. It was the Father. He has the ability, listen, because he has the ability at the height of your scaredness and nervousness and everything else, he can cause everything around you to go silent. When I was standing in the middle of a firefight, I didn't hear not one thing fire. Everything sounded peaceful. I couldn't hear anything, and there was no ringing, no anything. Everything went quiet. When the Lord takes over, I'm telling you, don't ever think that somehow the Lord can't do something. Don't say that. Don't say that. We have no idea what the Lord can do. I know one thing, the Lord will always do above and beyond what you're able to ask or think. There's no way you can imagine how God will deliver you. You cannot even pretend to know how God will save a person, how God will do a specific thing, because we don't have a capacity to know those things. We don't. We don't have that capacity. At your greatest moment of fear, the Lord can fill you instantly with the strength of David and the resolve of David. When your brain locks up, you don't know what to do in a situation, he can give you in a moment's notice the wisdom of King Solomon. He can stop time. You have a few seconds to do something. I'm telling you right now, he can have it to where it's almost like you had half a day. Really think it through. This always happens at the breaking moment. So don't be afraid of the breaking moment. Endure everything that comes into your life. Your Lord is with you. No one's going to run the Lord out of your life. He's with you. You know what that means? He carefully manages everything you're involved with. He already knows everything about you. So stop saying, I must disgust him. Stop saying that. He gave his life for us at the most disgusting moment we could ever be in. He knows every thought you ever had. And he still loves you. In fact, he's done nothing but love you. That's why some of us transition from, well, if I go with the Lord, I'm going to have to give up everything. And then it changed, because the more you find out about the Father, the more you have a desire to do things in accordance to his word. Now you go through life saying, I can, sin is no big deal. You have, in fact, your desire for sin leaves to such a degree, it can't even tempt you anymore. It's a non-issue. It becomes a non-issue. You're not struggling with sin anymore. You know why? Because you're done with it. That's why. Your struggle becomes working with people. You say, Lord, please teach me how to communicate so I can be effective with people with your word. Teach me how to handle your word. You start praying like that. But when sin comes along, you say, get out of here. Right? You keep going, you go to something else. You don't care if something is required for you to surrender, you don't care. It's an honor for you to surrender things. Greed leaves, all these things leave. Why? Because your heart truly is upon everybody else. And every single day of your life becomes consumed like that. You want to serve the Lord in the highest capacity you can. You do. And you want to be as genuine as possible. You have a desire to open up with everybody, but the Lord gives you wisdom. He gives you times and seasons you can do that. And then most of all, because he does not have to show you the fruits of your labors, from time to time, he'll show you that, yes, you have sown into somebody's life. And it's enough to keep you going for a whole nother year. Isn't that awesome? Doing the Lord's work, often you don't see if you're making any headway or not. You don't know if you're helping someone or hurting someone. You don't know. You're just trying to be as genuine as possible. But on occasion, the Lord will share with you how a person's life has been changed. Kind of like that person that came to me and said, I've been watching you for years, sir. Okay, what else? Well, I know you're a Christian, and I just wanted to tell you it was you that inspired me to go to the Lord. What? I didn't even know that God was watching me. You don't know those things, do you? When you become genuine, people are going to watch you from all angles. That brings me to my last point. You ready? All of you have a ministry. Every single last one of you. And it's nothing you said. It's how you're living. The way you live your life is the greatest ministry you'll ever have. Do you know that? Greatest ministry you'll ever have. People see your ups and downs, your struggle. They see you sometimes fall into sin, but most importantly, they see you keep getting back up and going towards Christ. That means everything to a person who's struggling with the world. To see you get up and go back to Christ means everything. That means you're a light. And I give everybody this visual. I always do this. But here it is. This the CoT. I'm giving you this story. This is part of a story. Imagine a person in a big crowd of people. New York City, big crowd, lights went out. Everybody is looking at something. They're crying out, all sorts of stuff, but this guy is lost. And he can't see anything. All of a sudden, through all the people, he sees a light. And it shines and it goes away. And he starts looking up saying, what is that light? Of all the lights that shined, he recognizes that light that shined. Out of hundreds of millions of people, he recognizes that little light. And it's tiny back there. But he says, that's the light I've been looking for. And he's been depressed for years. And all of a sudden, in the darkness with all those people, he sees that one light. And it becomes his hope. And so he hopes he sees it again. And he does. And he sees it. And when he sees it again, he says, there it is again. And he starts going towards it. And then it goes out. And he waits and he looks and he waits and looks. And everybody's got all other lights. And he didn't want to look at those lights. And then he sees that one light again. There it is. And he goes running towards it. And it goes out. Well, guess what? You know who that light is? He keeps saying that's you. That's you in your life. When you're serving the Lord, you're shining bright. Somebody sees it and they say, that's the light I've been looking for. And then you go back into the ways of the world and your light goes out. They don't see it. And the person has to stop. And then you go back to the Lord, you start shining again, and that person out there says, there that light is. See, because there's somebody in this world that can only see the light that comes from you. They need your light. They can't see my light. They can't see your neighbor's light. They see your light. And if you ever go out, that person, their hope is doomed. God made you a light in this world. Understand that. Understand what you are. Because somebody needs your light. Yours. Please remember that. Because that's real. That's all too real. Folks, I'm going to let you go. God bless each of you. I don't want to get mushy. That's true. How did I make myself mushy? Oh my goodness. Okay. God bless each of you. I'm going to see you guys next time right here at the Council of Time. I'll see you guys next time.